Hello, my name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the Illinois Principals Association. Thank you for joining me for this IPA talk. Got a real special one here for us today. We're going to be talking about a program that IPA has been involved with. I'm really excited about now over the course of this last year, the Alternative Principal Endorsement Program that we're doing in partnership with Aurora University. So we've got an individual that's with us from the program and heads that up, and Dr. Ed Howerton, and also a couple of individuals that just finished up the program. Hannah Giaconetti, did I get that right, Hannah? I've said it once, but I always feel like I got to ask there. So, and
Yes,
then
you're
Brittany
good.
Reif, yeah, excellent, excellent, and Brittany Reif as well. So, Ed, can we just start with you? Just let us know who you are and maybe a little bit of your background, and we'll let Hannah and Brittany introduce themselves, and we'll get into it.
Sure. I'm Ed Howerton. I'm the Director of Graduate Education Programs at Aurora University. I also teach in the Master of Ed Leadership Program and in the Alternative Principal Endorsement Program. I myself was a public school administrator. I was an assistant principal, a high school principal, and then an assistant superintendent for human resources. Started as a high school English teacher, and actually, we were talking earlier. Hannah said that she was talking about a middle school job that had opened up. I went from a high school English teacher to an elementary assistant principal, which was it
Oh,
seemed like a world to change at the time,
yeah.
but it really helped prepare me, I think, to better understand growth of students in terms of their academics and their cognitive functions and things like that. Um, so that's a little bit about me. This program, the Alternative Education Principal Endorsement Program, it's an alternative to a master's degree. Basically, most of the programs, all the programs other than ours in the state, students have to go through a 2-year or multi-year master's degree program in which the courses then prepare them to for the principal endorsement tests and other qualifications. Um, the way the program came about is actually was initially an interest in IPA's micro-credentials. I really was interested in these deep dives that the Ed Leaders Network created into specific areas of school leadership. And you were kind enough to let me take a peek at some of those. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to fit them into our master's degree program. And at some point, got to talk with you, got to thinking more and talked to some colleagues and thought, well, maybe if we just broke off a piece of our program, the internship, and combined it with the micro-credentials, we might have an entire program. And so working with you and working with the developers from the micro-credentials side of it, created the alternative program, presented to ISB, and we were able to launch that in fall of 2023. So it's been a great ride. It's been a very popular
We're
program.
and we're a year in, and we've got the first couple of completers here with us,
Mhm.
which is really
Yeah.
exciting. So why don't we turn to both of you here briefly? Hannah, why don't we start with you? Just share with us a little bit about who you are, your background, and then just let us. Why don't we start with this question as kind of a follow up from your introduction? Is what interested you from the beginning just to even consider being a part of this alternative prep program?
Sure. I'm Hannah Giaconetti. I currently teach kindergarten in Crystal Lake, Illinois. I teach at West Elementary School. I started my education journey at Elmhurst College. I went to Elmhurst for undergrad, and then I got this job right out of college. I started at this school teaching second grade. So I taught second grade for 5 years, and then I was asked to move down to kindergarten, which was definitely a big leap that I wasn't necessarily ready for, but now that I have the kindergartners, I love seeing them grow and just the change from when they come in August and not knowing how to sit at the rug to already now at this time of the year, they're writing sentences. So it's really a neat year of growth to see with them. I've been at the same school for 11 years. I've done some different activities in the school. I used to lead a dance club and then did a talent show as well with some other colleagues. I did get my master's degree from National Lewis in learning sciences. And then right after that, I did receive an email from Aurora about this alternative program. So when I saw the email, I went to my administrators about it, and kind of asked them their opinion. And what was really appealing to me was that I wouldn't need to go for an additional master's, since my master's degree wasn't in leadership. But I felt like that was something that I was ready for, that I felt like it would be a good program to start. And as I completed it throughout the year, I really did gain a lot of valuable experience through it.
Yeah. And before we hit the record button, Hannah, you mentioned how you've got a couple of outstanding leaders there that you have worked with over the course of your 11 years, that they've been in that school for almost the entire time that you've been there, which is unusual. That is not the norm. I was sharing with you earlier that the average amount of time, let me back up. Print schools average 2 principals every 6 years is typically the case, and so you've been blessed with individuals who had longer tenure with that, and that might have been helpful in making a decision to do something like this.
It certainly was. Yes. My principal, she started as assistant principal my first year, and then our principal retired. So she moved to the principal position. And so she's been here 10 years as principal, and our assistant has been here 10 as well. So it was very nice to have both of them since I've known them. And they've seen me grow as a teacher too, and that they were ready to help me take this next step. So they were very valuable mentors to have, and they've really set a great culture here at our school.
That's terrific. Appreciate that. I'm sure we'll hear some more about that in a bit. So, Brittany, let's turn to you. Let's hear about you.
Sure. My name is Brittany Reif. I went to Illinois State for my undergrad. I got it in PE and health, grades K through 12. I was hired right after I graduated at Carl Sandburg Middle School in Mundelein. I taught PE and health there for 6 years. I loved my experience there. We had an assistant principal there who was like always telling me like, oh, you have leader written all over you. You need to go into leadership. And at the time I was like, you're crazy. No way. From there, I was fortunate to get hired in Barrington. That's where I student taught. And so I got hired at an elementary school. So I went from middle school to elementary school. I worked at Grove Avenue Elementary for 6 years. That's when I started this Aurora program. Prior to that, I got my master's degree in curriculum and instruction with an endorsement in ESL from Concordia University, and completed that when I was working at Sandburg in Mundelein. When I got hired in Barrington, I really started thinking like, oh, well, maybe what my assistant principal was telling me about going into leadership, maybe I would like that. I don't know. But then my husband went and he got his administration license or degree. And then he got his first administrative job. And I was like vicariously living through him. I felt like, every day I couldn't wait for him to get home to be like, what did you do today? And so then I
was expecting you to say, if he can do it, I can sure do it. That's what I was expecting to hear. But anyway.
But then I started looking into programs, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have 2 young kids. I have a daughter who's 9 and a son who's 2. And my daughter plays travel sports. And I'm like, what? I don't want to do another 2-year program. I want to do something where, it's quick and it's convenient, that I don't have to go in for, that just met the needs of the lifestyle that I had currently being a mom. And so I found Aurora, and I, submitted my application, had my interview with Ed, and just like hit the ground running. And decided that over the summer of this past summer, I was like, well, I'm just going to start applying. Even though I don't have my degree yet, what does it hurt? Maybe I'll land an interview and at least gain some good experience, some good, leadership experience in regards to interviewing, because that type of interview is different than a teaching interview. And lo and behold, I landed my dream job, and I'm a dean of students at the high school that I graduated from in Lake Zurich.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations to that. That's outstanding. So, Ed, let's talk a little bit about the program, just generally in terms of some of the specifics. So, Hannah and Brittany, you both have your master's degrees, which is obviously one of the primary requirements here to be able to earn the alternative endorsement, and not have to go through and earn another master's degree. Ed, of course, people have to earn the internship, and then there's 14 micro-credentials that have to be earned through IPA's Ed Leaders Network system. That's what those are a part of. And then, of course, also have to still take the certification exams and do that initial teacher evaluator training. So there still is some significant work that has to be a part of that. Now, without getting into maybe every micro-credential, Ed, could you just give us an idea of the structure of the internship and how you guys work to marry those up with the micro-credentials that the students and things will be taking, and hear a little bit about that. And then Hannah and Brittany will maybe get into more specifics of your experience of working through it.
Sure. So I started looking at I went back to the Part 40 ISB rules for preparation of principals in the state, and specifically looked at the internship requirements and then the coursework requirements, and kind of extrapolated the big areas, and I laid those out on a template. And I first looked at what we were doing already in our internship, since we were going to drop the coursework out that wasn't necessary to look at. And then I aligned those to, those state requirements. And then with the help of your developers for the micro-credentials, started to look at which micro-credentials best aligned to the internship activities, and came up with 14 that aligned to the 13 internship activities that we developed. We actually had more internship activities in the master's program, but we were able to consolidate some things. I also revised them because I wanted there to be sort of a crosswalk in terms of the knowledge that they were gaining from the internship to the application in the micro-credentials. Because the micro-credentials, as you all know, Jason and Hannah and Brittany now know, are assessments. And they were developed for practitioners, people that are in administrative positions. So I knew that this was not going to be an easy task for students who did not have administrative experience. But one of the requirements of the program is 5 years experience in a school. And as you pointed out, the master's degree. And I figured and talked to several people, a lot smarter than I am, this kind of experience in a school with a master's degree, can they come into a program like this and have success? And the answer was yes. It was if the internship is rigorous enough, if people delve into it enough, they can take that experience and the artifacts that they create in the internship and bring a lot of that into the micro-credential assessment world. And so sitting here with us today are two examples that it definitely can be done. And moreover, the program was designed to be done in 1 year. Partially because I think that's just attractive. Our MAL program is 2 years, 1 year to both of their points. Wanted to get in and get it done. And both of them finished and other people in their cohort finished in 1 year. So it's definitely doable.
Yeah, for sure. So Brittany, let's talk a little bit about your internship experience. How was that? What about it do you feel like was particularly relevant and helpful, especially now as you're in your leadership position and kind of working through that and have had the advantage probably of doing a little bit of your internship in the leadership experience too. So that was helpful because the nice thing about being a dean of students is you don't have to have that endorsement quite yet. You can be a dean, but if you want to be an AP or a principal, obviously you do. And Hannah, be ready. This question's coming your direction too. So you went first last time. We'll have Brittany go first this time, and then we'll come your direction. Can you just speak to that experience and also for those that maybe are curious about whether this might be a good program for them to participate in? What do you think that they need to be considering to make sure that they're successful going through it?
Sure. So I was so fortunate to have two wonderful leaders when I started this program. I was at Grove Avenue Elementary School in Barrington. My principal was Katie Matthews, and we had an assistant principal, Kelly Harridan. And when I had mentioned to both of them that I was thinking about doing this program, because it was midway through the year, I started in January, and they both were so supportive and encouraged me to do it. They gave me an opportunity to really lead my specials team. So, I was a PE teacher, so I got to lead the special staff. We really worked collaboratively together. Anytime I needed any support, I always could go to them and they were there to help. So I think that, for me, if you have a supportive administration and supportive administrators that believe in you, that makes all the difference. And then when I came here to Lake Zurich High School, it's kind of a unique experience because I went from being a teacher to being a dean. And so my internship was truly was my job, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm so fortunate that there is another dean. I'm not the only dean. So there's another dean here. His name is Joe Haney, and he just like took me under his wing. And I mean, still to this day, it's everything, we're constantly bouncing ideas off of each other. If I needed any help with the coursework, he was always there to help. Studying for the exams, both exams. I mean, we were like doing the questions together, like, okay, talk me through this. How did you get there? So, the one really important thing that I can say is that if you have supportive administrators who are willing to help you, that hands down was the number one reason why I was able to be successful through this program and complete it in the allotted time.
Yeah. Well, and when you're not in obviously a more formal leadership role like you are now, having people that will give you opportunity, right? And let you be able to do the things that are necessary is absolutely critical, particularly with the way that programs are structured today versus maybe when Ed and I went through the program a couple of decades ago. I mean, there is a higher level of rigor there and expectation as far as that experience. So that's important to note.
Yeah, I'll also say that there are some of the micro credentials, like for example, managing system logistics, right? That maybe my job, I don't really do a lot of that, right? So I needed to reach out. We have an assistant principal here, and his name is Andy Lambert. And I went and I spoke to him, and he was so helpful with me and helping me to be able to formulate things that I needed and give me experiences to be able to, meet all of the requirements of the micro-credential. Yeah. So having, an administrator or administrators that are there to support you and help you was hands down the number one reason why I was able to be successful in this program.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sure. Appreciate that perspective. Hannah, how about your experience with your internship?
Yes, I definitely agree with Brittany. My principal, Beth Klinsky, and my assistant principal, Catherine Cruz, they both were amazing from the very beginning. When I shared with them that I was thinking about this program, they were very much like, we will help you, we will support you if you're ready. They didn't want to push me, and they knew I had just finished my master's. But I felt like it was a good time for me. I was still kind of in the mode of school and doing master's work on the weekend. So I felt like I could fit it into my schedule. And then, like Brittany said, I started in January. So I felt like I had started with my class and I had those routines, and I felt like it was a good time to start. Something that I found to be really helpful with the internship was my principal, assistant principal, and I scheduled meetings every 2 weeks. So regardless of if I had something to talk about, like if I had a micro-credential I wanted them to look at, we would have that time carved out because as we know, administrators are busy and they often get pulled away for different things. So every other week we set aside time after school so that it wouldn't, get interrupted by different needs throughout the building. But we would sit down, and sometimes it would be looking at a micro-credential and trying to figure out artifacts or how I could help support those different outcomes. Or it was just I happened to be in their office and they said, oh, we're making a parent phone call right now, and it's really good experience for you to have. Listen in with us. I also feel like they provided a lot of great opportunities. I've been a part of the PBIS committee at my school, both tier 1 and the advanced tiers. So when I started this program, my assistant principal typically leads the meetings, but since I've been a part of the committee, she kind of passed that on to me, and she continued on the committee as a supporting role. But when she passed that off to me, I was able to have more experience with collecting data and analyzing it and having those collaborative conversations with the committee. So I do feel like just those experiences through the internship really helped. There were different, things that would come up. We have a podcast at our district, and so they needed a kindergarten teacher to talk about kindergarten registration. Uh-huh. My principal came to me right away and she said, can I sign you up for this? I know you'll use it later on for a micro-credential. And I did. I used it for the communication advocacy one, which looking back, I wouldn't have known, but I'm so thankful that they gave me those opportunities and I was able to jump in and then use that experience. So it was really just great to have that carved out time with them so that we could sit and talk about, an internship activity, or like I said, just things that came up throughout the day that they said, we're going to talk about this, or, we have to problem solve this situation, but you're welcome to come sit with us. It was that experience that I would not have gotten if I wasn't meeting with them regularly.
Yeah. So, Hannah, you referenced micro-credentials a little bit, and even getting support from your administrative team, as you were working through some of that. So let's talk a little bit about micro-credentials. When you think about internships, and that's not much of a stretch for people to think about that in comparison to maybe a student teaching experience or whatever, and kind of having an understanding of that. But micro-credentials are in the education space anyway, are a bit of a different way of us looking at the overall learning experience, and in particular applying it in this way, for endorsement attainment. And it's important to note, Ed's referenced this a couple of times already, but it's important to note that micro credentials themselves, they're not a course, they're not a class, a workshop, or whatever. It is an assessment of skill. That's what they are built for, is for you to be able to produce artifacts, that line up with the skills that are being assessed. And of course, you do a lot of reflection, and then there's some, going in between with you and the assessor, and all of that. And sometimes that's quick if you hit the mark, and sometimes you've got to go back and redo based on the feedback and things that are received. I'm just kind of curious, especially as you were maybe looking at your first micro credential or two, how that hit you, how you reacted to that, thinking about that first bit of feedback that you were getting from the assessors, who you don't know who they are, and that's on purpose. So all of that, and then maybe also thinking about what is it. Obviously, you both got into a rhythm a bit, and were able to work through it and finally get them done. But I'm just also, like, as people are thinking about the possibility of doing this and doing a program that really is performance-based, right? I mean, these are performance-based assessments, which is a real high level and rigorous form of working through a program. Like, what do people need to be thinking about in order to what it's going to take to be successful working through all of this? So there are a couple of questions and everything that I just threw out at you. So if you just wouldn't mind kind of sharing your thoughts, and we'll make sure that we get answered what needs to be.
Sure. So I will tell you, when I looked at the first micro-credential, I was like, oh boy, just because, I was like, oh my goodness, like trying to figure it out. I had a binder that I had created to keep it all organized. And I will say that once you get the first one, maybe the first two done, you get into a rhythm. So I know for me, I was really overwhelmed with the first one. Got a little bit easier with the second one. And then, it was pretty much smooth sailing after that. The one piece of advice that I have is reach out, like ask your cohort. Hey, I'm doing this micro credential right now. Does anybody have any ideas for what would meet the qualifications for whatever, outcome? Reach out to your administrator, reach out to your mentor. If you're confused, that's my number one, piece of advice. And once you get comfortable doing that and you get in the routine, it really does come a lot easier, and it goes a lot faster. But they are time consuming. You really do have to set aside the time to do it and to look at it. And take time to submit it and get the feedback if needed, and resubmit it if needed as well. I know, like, I reached out to Dr. Howerton a number of times, like, hey, these ones got bounced back to me. This is what I submitted. What do you think? Do you have any ideas? What could I do to meet this outcome better? And he was always more than willing to help. We set up Zoom calls occasionally to figure it out, and so I think that if you're willing to reach out because you need support, like that's how you're going to get through it. We just needed to help each other. But I think that, like, overall they went well, but there were definitely some times that I was struggling. But with the support of Dr. Howerton and the cohort and my mentors, once you get into the routine and the rhythm, go smooth.
So let me ask you, Brittany, because people may be wondering, all right, so if this is an assessment, what's being assessed? And you've both have referenced the term artifacts. Let me pitch it to you, Hannah. Like with your artifacts, could you just explain like what would be an example or two of the type of artifact that would be produced? And then as part of the micro-credential process, like what do you have to do with this? You know, submit it and then what? So can you just walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So for the artifacts, I typically, since I gave the PBIS example, I'll just stick with that. Something that I used for an artifact was a PBIS agenda. So then I, uploaded it to the website. And then as the artifact, you do have to provide an explanation. So I was always very clear in my explanation to share how I met that outcome. I will say something that I did, like Brittany said, she had a binder. I also had a binder, and I'm very much of a paper pencil person. So I know I probably wasted a lot of paper, but I printed out every document for those micro-credentials. And as I was going through, I would underline and kind of find those keywords and then add those into my explanation to share. Here's how, I collaborated with the team, or whatever the outcome is, whatever they're looking for. I was making sure that the artifact really fit that. Something I liked is that you could provide more than one artifact. So maybe if that one artifact didn't hit everything in the outcome, that I would then upload a second one and say on this page, I was also very specific. So I would say on page 2 in the second table, so that the assessor knew exactly where to look. And so that I was able to explain what I was doing to meet that outcome. So that was kind of my process. I do feel like they paired up well with the internship activities. So and like Brittany said, that those first few micro-credentials, I would say just try to get one done because you feel better when the first one's done. I know
like don't try to do 5 all at the one time, right? Like get one knocked out and then go from there, right?
Right. But I would also say try to do it early on. Like I wouldn't say wait a few months and then submit your first one, because it just felt good to get it done and say, okay, I did that one right. I must have known what I was doing. It gives you a little bit of confidence to keep going and feel like you're on that right track, so that you are able to keep working at a good pace that can help you to finish in that year. But I always did an internship with the micro-credential at the same time. I know some people in our cohort didn't. They did all the internship activities first to get that experience and then went and worked on micro-credentials. I just found it was a good process for me to kind of go back and forth. I could then use things from the internship activity and then add them in as artifacts within those micro-credentials.
Well, and Ed, if I recall in my conversations with you, you've done a pretty good job here, and you're learning to deliver the program in a way to help candidates be successful, is to try to help them understand this part of the internship is going to help you with completing these micro-credentials and earning these things, right? I mean, trying to help draw those connections for them.
Right. And going into this, as much as I look at all the micro-credentials to decide which 14 best fit, and then looking at those extensively, when you hit the ground running with this program, it's all of a sudden, you don't know what you don't know. And members of your team were extremely helpful in putting these pieces together, because, these weren't created for aspiring administrators. And so, we had to think differently about them. But I totally respect the fact that nobody was willing to give the interns a break. It is what it is. It's an assessment of your knowledge. And so you've got to.
You're not going to get a break on the job, right?
You're not going to get a break on the
right
job,
now,
right? So it's not lowering the bar. It's finding ways for them to get over the bar. And I would say the people that find success, they don't see the internship activities as assignments. They see them as opportunities to dig into something that they don't know about. And then the micro-credential then is, I think they both said it in a different way, to celebrate, hey, I kind of know this. I can kind of put this into play and write about this in a way that demonstrates, what I've learned. And so, and then, just from Vicky and Deb, I've learned, how do I support, and Kevin Scomer, the other instructor, how do we support these students when they get feedback from the assessor? what are we looking for? How do we look at the outcomes and the sub outcomes so that we can best support the students? So
Yeah.
it's been
Well,
a
and that's a
process,
shout out.
but it's,
Yeah.
go
Well,
ahead.
that's a shout out to Vicki DeWitt and Deb Graney
Yeah,
on the IPA team, as well as Arlen
yeah,
Peoples, who's our ELN director, and
yeah.
all that stuff. Obviously, working to make things as seamless as possible. One thing, Brittany, I wanted to touch on that you mentioned, through the experience and gaining a lot by reaching out, connecting with others. And what I'm curious about here, the micro credentials are assessments, as we've discussed. They're agnostic to the learning that you bring to the table, right? You're learning with your internship experience. You're learning obviously with your connections with your administrators that are a part of your team, and maybe some other colleagues that you have. I'm just curious, and this would be for both of you, but we'll start with you, Brittany. Like, did you find yourself doing any other research or exploration for learning when it came to completion of either internship activities or the micro credentials themselves?
You know,
And if you don't, if it was primarily working with colleagues, that's okay. I'm just, because I think it's important for people to know there are lots of different ways to have inputs of learning for these micro credentials.
Sure. Honestly, like the experience through Aurora and the micro credentials, predominantly that was really just collaborative with either Dr. Howerton, my cohort, my mentors, and people that I was working with. The only thing that I really had to seek outside support with is I myself wanted to have additional study tools for the assessments. So
Yeah.
195 and 196. So I did go ahead and purchased outside of Aurora, whatever, and outside of the IPA, just study tools for me, just for myself, because that's just how I am. Like, I want to have a study tool. I want to kind of get an idea of what the assessments are like. So that's really the only thing that I feel like I had to go, outside to seek additional support. But Hannah, I'm not sure what you think, but at least for me, that was pretty.
And that's good advice. And I want to come back to the tests in just a second, but I appreciate you sharing that, because being prepared for those is absolutely critical. And I remember doing a little bit of that too, years and years ago, when it was Type 75. But Hannah, how about you, just from, when it comes to the learning necessary to be successful?
Yep, I agree. I feel like most of the learning was collaborative in nature. Sometimes I felt like it had to be a little bit more outside my building. Since I'm in a pretty big district, our communication is more kind of covered through our administrative offices. So if there was a question I had or something that I needed to look into, it was my mentors connecting me with someone at our central office saying, oh, talk to the communications director. Or I know Brittany talked about the managing system logistics. So for that one, the building systems, really, my principal meets with our operations director. So it was more of things like that. Like, I sat in a meeting with them and learned about, the different plans they have for summer work, which were things that I wouldn't have known if I didn't expand some of that collaboration. So that's really more of what I saw, was maybe expanding that collaboration just beyond the school. I know it's different. Some school districts are smaller and you do have all those responsibilities in your school building, but some things I felt like I had to reach out to the district or different people, different curriculum directors, to kind of see their viewpoints, or just to meet with them and, share what I was working on and if they had any insight or helpful ideas for me. So it was nice to have that support at the district level too. And just, learning different things about administration through those conversations.
I'm grateful for that, and definitely appreciate that perspective. I mean, and within ELN, we've tried to build some courses that are in alignment with some of the micro credentials to be available. But beyond that, I mean, having that real world experience and sitting at a meeting and actually hearing people talk about the work that has to be done is really powerful. So I want to circle back real quick to the assessments, 195 and 196, because I will just tell you, for me, one of the kind of benchmarks for us in terms of making sure that we were running a program that was going to be successful. And Ed, I'm sure you were paying attention to this maybe even more closely than me, but was to make sure that you guys were going to be in position to pass those two tests, because without it, the endorsement's not coming. And so, the state's set its standard for what it's looking for in school leaders, and needed to pass that. And Brittany, you talked a little bit about, the study work that you did, and that obviously is sure valuable. I'm just kind of curious about the experience overall, the internship, the micro-credentials. Do you feel like that was something that helped you prepare and be ready for those two tests? And Hannah, I'm going to want an answer from you as well.
Absolutely. I do think that my internship, that my experience, collaborating with my mentors, the coursework that I did through Aurora, the things that I did through the micro-credentials absolutely prepared me for the assessments. I am just a person that I need to know that I am 110% prepared all the time. And so my husband, as he had gone through previously and completed his administrative degree, he had recommended a study tool that he used.
Yeah.
So I also used that study tool. Really, it wasn't because I didn't feel I was, ill prepared. It was just to make myself feel a little bit more confident going into the exams. But I did feel as though that my coursework and the micro-credentials did, prepare me to be able to be successful in those exams.
So appreciate that. And Hannah, can you talk a little bit about what people can expect when they're taking those tests?
Sure. So the tests were a little bit more situational based. So it wasn't like, here's a question, here are the specific answers. So in that aspect, I do feel like the micro-credentials and the internship really helped me prepare to think about, okay, if this were the situation and I was the administrator, what would be the best way to handle it? So there were multiple choice, and then there were essay questions as well within both of the exams. And then sometimes there was like a case study, so you would have to read about it and then choose the answer to questions. Like Brittany said, I also felt like my experience with micro-credentials and Aurora helped to prepare me. I also did purchase a test taking tool as well. And really that was just for me to really focus on the test at the moment. Like once I was in testing mode for a month, I wanted to just focus on looking at those questions, how they would kind of be worded, and thinking through the answer to them. So all the buildup of micro-credentials and the Aurora coursework helped me prepare for that. But I just wanted to really focus in on that assessment, because as I was doing the micro-credentials or the Aurora work, I wasn't necessarily thinking of the test long-term. Like I was just like, I'm going to get through the micro-credential and the internship task. So then thinking back over my experience did help me with taking those assessments.
Great. Well, sure appreciate that perspective, and we will continue to assess the program, I know, moving forward, and to make sure that people are in good shape. Today is January 23rd, 2025, and so far, Ed, I think we've got 100% pass rate, right? So that we know of anyway.
Yeah.
That we know of people that have gone through it. So that's pretty good. So Ed, as we wrap up here, just a couple last things for you. So first question is, as you are working with students now going through this program, a decent number, like we were close to 70, right, that signed up through the 3 semesters this last year. And I know we're getting ready to start up here with another group coming this spring with the spring semester. If people are sitting there wondering, is this the right kind of fit for me? What are you seeing in students that are obviously, we got 2 successful people here with it, but what is it that prospective students need to be prepared for themselves, and what kinds of, I guess, dispositions do they need to possess in order to be successful? And what is besides the internship, a very much self-directed program to a large extent, right? These micro-credentials really require for individuals which this is not for the faint of heart, right? That they've got to be willing to shoulder that responsibility of getting these things done, because you don't have a class scheduled and assignments due on a certain date.
Right.
It's up to these people in order to get it done. So any thoughts to that? Any words of
I've actually taken to asking Brittany, I think, referenced the interview, which is part of the requirements by the state to get into this program. We interview everybody, and one of the questions I ask is, what do you know about this program? And then I tell them, well, here's this program, because yes, you have to be organized, you have to be, driven, focused, things like that, but you got to really want to do this. I feel like I and Kevin Scomer, the other instructor, provide as much support as we possibly can. I try to make myself available because, like you said, there's not a class meeting time. So if Brittany or Hannah, or other students want to meet at a certain day or time, and on Zoom, I try to make that happen for them because I know that their time, is precious. And so, I think for the people that enter this program, there's got to be a willingness to be an explorer. You've got to say, okay, I can see what I want. It's out there. I want this principal endorsement because I want to do X, Y, or Z. And I'm okay with uncharted waters. I'm okay with not having, an online program where I'm opening a module every week. I'm okay with not going to a class where I know everybody, I see everybody. We talk, for 4.5 hours one time a week. I'm going to be doing this a lot, largely on my own. Both have talked about the support group. Their cohort was great. They exchanged phone numbers and emails, and I know communicated a lot. So how do I find a way to get what I need out of this program? Whether it's talking to my mentors, which is hugely important in this, Jason, right? I mean, this is how we get new leaders. Is we've got to pass along that support to people.
We don't, and the need for mentors and coaches doesn't stop with the prep program, right? Like we need them forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's up to them to say, I'm okay with getting into this boat and just launching and see who's going to help me along the way and figuring it out. Quite frankly, I think this type of learning, this problem-based learning, this exploratory learning is probably in some ways better than cracking a book and saying, okay, I'm reading chapter 7 about leadership and thinking you're going to walk away being a great leader. No, they've got to struggle through, problems and frustrations and not knowing, what's coming next. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, then I think that this is a good program for you.
Yeah, sure appreciate that. Well, I need to be curious and dig in,
yes.
right?
And
endure. I mean, obviously, working through an internship plus these 14 micro-credentials requires some real resilience and endurance in order to do it. But that's the job of school leadership too. I mean, that's
absolutely
dispositions that are a requirement. So Ed, as I mentioned, we're here in the latter part of January 2025 at this point. Students might be interested in this program. What do they need to do if this is something that they want to consider moving forward?
So on the aurora.edu website, actually it's the first section of the graduate programs is the alternative endorsement program, principal endorsement program. They can go on there, learn a little bit more about the program. There's also a link to the application process. They can also email me at ehowerton at aurora.edu. I can work through questions with them. I get a lot of questions that you and Arlen and Vicky send me from people interested in the program, but we can definitely get them set up in the right direction. And to your point earlier, we've started a cohort every semester, fall, spring, summer, since our first student started. One student in fall of 23,
right.
And then Hannah and Brittany came in the second cohort in the spring. Then, so we've been fortunate, and I'm getting inquiries all the time about it. And so, but yeah, just reach out to us at Aurora University, and we'll answer your questions and see if this is a good fit for you.
Well, that's great, and we'll be sure too in the notes for this this episode of IPA Talks that we'll have, Ed, your information along with the links to the various websites, and it's also available for you to find more out more about the program on the IPA website as well. So, well, Hannah and Brittany, congratulations on getting through. Brittany, congrats on your leadership role. That's outstanding. Hannah, we look forward to seeing you as a school leader in hopefully the not too distant future. We need good people like you in that job, that's for sure. And Ed, obviously, it's a pleasure for IPA to be collaborating with you and Aurora, and we look forward to seeing this program continue for some time. And one final shout out I do want to give, obviously, the state board in helping us get this program off the ground. And while she doesn't work for ISB anymore, I'd be remiss not to thank Dr. Jen Kermis, who used to work for the state board, doesn't currently, but really caught the vision for this and helped shepherd this through with members of the ISB team to make this a reality. And so we're excited to report out the success moving forward and share with them the good things that are going on. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate you spending a little time with me here today.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, this is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the IPA. If there's anything that the association can do for you, don't hesitate to give us a call. And you can always find us on the web at ilprinciples.org. Take care.